This financial literacy video is brought to you by Young Kings and Queens in partnership with Comerica Bank.
All right. Thanks, Takesha. I want to thank everybody for waiting this morning. This evening, I had a little technical difficulty. And so we are going to get going here and we're going to be making budgets work. So if there's a question, remember to put it in the chat so Takesha can relay it to me. I would appreciate it. So we're going to get going. I'm going to share screen. Takesha, please let me know to make sure everybody can see that. Does that look good?
I can see it. It's not the full screen, but I can see it.
It's what? Not the full screen?
Right. I see like your search bar.
All right. Yeah, it's not a PDF. So yeah, everybody's going to see that search bar.
Okay. Well, yep, I see it.
All right, perfect. So again, thanks. We're going to talk about making budgets work, which is the second part of budgeting from last week. So we're going to continue on that conversation. And so in this workshop, we're going to talk about personal obstacles to budgeting, because that is a key component, is overcoming our own personal internal obstacles to create that budget. Then also we're going to figure out how to track and analyze our spending, because if we don't do that, we won't be able to create a budget. Then we want to also figure out short and long-term goals that we want to have. So when we create a budget, we want to have an end goal, either a short-term and a long-term goal, so we have something that we're always working towards. Because when you accomplish a goal, you want to feel good about it. So you want to have those and have mileposts, as I call them, so knowing I'm accomplishing something as I go along. We're going to talk about debt reduction, creating some emergency savings. It's common knowledge out there, 40% of families in the US cannot or do not have $400 in cash to use for an emergency. So think about that. 40 families out of 100 families cannot or get a hold of $400 in cash for an emergency. And that's, I equate that to just one simple thing. 2 tires on your car costs about $400. So at least if you had $400 in cash, you need to replace a tire. Usually you got to replace 2. You would have some emergency money and you wouldn't take on additional debt. And then we're going to talk about a few strategies to help support all that good stuff. So we talked about this last time. What is budgeting? In the simple process, budgeting is the creation of a plan on how to spend your money. It's to help you live within your means. It's to help you figure out how to pay down debt. And it saves for the future and emergencies. Oh, hold on, my friend is. I need to tell him that I am here. So give me 1 second. I apologize for the interruption. There. Now he doesn't have to worry about thinking that we're not doing this. So I appreciate your patience. So that's the kind of the format we want to think and we want to work at. So obstacles. And I can tell you, when I first started creating my own budgets, I had some of these obstacles. I will tell you, you will have some obstacles that you will see here and or others that may not be on this list. So as I'm talking about a few of them, if you have a chance, jot down some notes in what might be your hurdle or obstacle. We're short-sighted as humans. We want the here and now. Sometimes we don't want to think about the future. It's too complicated, and it will take some time to be organized, to eliminate complication. It takes too much time. Initially, when you set it up, yes, it will take time. My income and my spending is not consistent. And that's true. Everybody has some ups and downs in their income. Budgeting will help smooth out the process when you have spikes, when you have valleys. So that way you can plan to save your spikes so you can cover your valley. And of course, we're creatures of habit. We don't want to change. I don't have self-control. It causes stress. It's a hassle. And I can't keep up, so what? And it's all there, and I've done a majority of these. And it takes systematically working at this to be good at it. So I can tell you, you're not alone. There's a lot of people, me personally, I've gone through this. I create budgets. My wife will tell you I can create a budget in a heartbeat. And then she would tell me that I will take my pencil and a week later I will poke a hole through that budget 1 or 2 times and I'll have to start all over. So I'm trying to help you not do something that I've done incorrectly in the past, which is create holes in my budget. So when you create a budget, you want to think about some end results, short-term goals, mid-term goals, long-term goals. Short-term, 3 years or less, mid-term, 3 to 10, and long-term, 10 or later. So as I'm talking, I'd like you to think about what you would like to have for a short-term goal. It might be elimination of some debt. It might be saving towards that vacation that you haven't taken in a while. It might be just a simple thing of setting up some savings so you have emergency funds. And so it doesn't happen overnight. You have to be systematic when you do this. And it's the same with the other goals. If you want to upgrade your car, if you want to create a down payment on a house, work on paying off debt, you want to put it into the plan. Longer term, after 10 years, how do you put money aside, create that money that you can put aside for a long-term goal. So on a piece of paper, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to go ahead and write down some goals. So I'd like you to take a second, think about and write down a few goals. And I'm going to give you 60 seconds. So at 6:15, I'll pick up for what I left right now. So I'm going to turn off the camera for that 60 seconds. And there you go. Now you get some time to think about or go grab some paper. All right. And I'm back. And it's amazing that 60 seconds goes quick, but we're planning for a lifetime. So even though it was only 60 seconds, maybe you put something of, you want to figure out a way to save for retirement. We'll talk about that towards the end here. So one of the things that you want to think about is to create a budget, you need to organize your financial documents. You got to gather all your different sources of income. Some folks just have W-2 income. Some folks do a W-2 and they might do Lyft on the side for some additional income. My son-in-law, he's got a W-2 income, but he does welding on the side because he's a professional welder. So on the weekends, if there's somebody who wants a welding job, he'll quote him. He might have a welding job. So he has an average of what he earns per month from welding that he has to keep track of. then of course you want to start creating a list of your debts, your fixed expenses, your variable expenses as you go about. I tell folks, when you're starting to get organized, you need to keep track of how you're spending your money on a weekly and daily basis. So use your cell phone to take notes. If that doesn't work for you, buy yourself a little 3x5 spiral notebook and write it down. It's easy to go to the gas station, is my best example. Is I go to the gas station and I'll wander in and get some candy bars or potato chips. And so instead of spending $30 in gas, I spend $30 in gas plus a $10 extra on other stuff that's not in the budget because it wasn't planned for. It was an impulse buy. And a budget is going to help not stop it in the impulse buy, but maybe cause you to think twice before you pull the trigger on that impulse. So as we go through, and I talked about, you need to list out your different income sources and a rough and how much you're earning each month. And and if you get paid bi-weekly, what you need to do is multiply that by 26 and then divide by 12 to get your average, because you get 2 extra paychecks throughout the year. Some folks will take those, just consider themselves only being paid 24 times during the year, and those 2 extra paychecks they try to save, which is a good thing if they can do it. Listing out all your income in averages, and that's not your gross income. I want you to put down your net income, because you got to remember that's what you live by. I mean, I think everybody would say they wish they lived on their gross. But we all have to face the fact that we pay taxes, insurances that come out of that money. So we need to make sure that we are using the net number when we're creating that budget. So now when you think about the expenses, and one of the things you can do as you're creating this, you can use an Excel spreadsheet because it's very helpful. It has some calculations that you can create in the cells to help you out, to keep track of like your income and averages. You can do the same thing when you start tracking down your expenses. And when you do your expenses and the average, I want you to start thinking, is it a want or is it a need? Meaning a rent payment or a mortgage is a need. You need to pay those. The going out to the movies is a want. So listing out the entertainment, the restaurants, all that needs to go into a budget. And if it's not there, but you want to do it, it's okay to put something in there and put a dollar amount to it to see where you're going to be at. So if it's there and you budget and it falls into everything, that's money you have to go do something, and you're not denying yourself, because sometimes when you deny yourself an activity or something, it may cause a stress point where you will break your budget all the time because you want to be doing it. Also, when you're working on this, you want to start listing your debts. So you want to list them by the percentage, your monthly payment, and your balance. So if you had 4 credit cards, you list them, ABC, credit card, DEF, HIG, MLO, and the different percentages of interest, 13, 14, 15, 16. Your monthly payments, say they're 25, 30, you get the idea, and then the balances. So you can create a plan and you'll understand where you're at. And on the credit card, you want to put down the minimum balance, because what you're going to be doing in some ideas, we talked about it, is that snowball theory. So when you have extra money, you're going to be working on paying down the one credit card that has the lowest balance to eliminate first. That's one of those signposts I talk about. It's about getting and being successful in eliminating debt and feeling good about yourself when you're doing it. So when they talk about discretionary income, it's going to be your total monthly net income. Remember the net, your total monthly expenses. I would tell you that's your fixed expenses, your wants. So in here, you're going to have your rent, your car payment, your electric, car insurance, phone, utilities, all of that would be lumped into this, your cable. If you're using internet access, I should say not cable, but internet access, because you use it for a job or you use it, they have it available to be check and do things and manage and monitor your money. It's going to be in there. And that gets you your discretionary income. That money is going to be portioned out into your needs, your debt retirement, and your savings. So we talked about this last week, the 50-30-20 rule. And so that's how that you're going to be looking at that 50%, you want to be working towards those total monthly expenses, those needs. The wants, of course, is part of that discretionary, and same with that savings and debt. So if you're a little higher than 50% in your needs, that means you need to make adjustment with your wants and savings and debt. And based on your goals that you created before, that will help you make decisions in that percentages. So say if you're 55 here, you might need to go to 27 or 25% in wants to make that work, because you have a goal of paying down your debts and you want to keep that money freed up to do that. And this is just simple. If you use an Excel spreadsheet, you can create some very simple calculations that come down and divide. You add up all your needs, you divide it by your net income, and that's going to give you a percentage. And then that will work off the same way on your wants and on for your saving and debt retirement. And when you add it all together, the goal is to be at 100%. And this is the same calculation as you can see that I just talked about. So we talked about this last week, the avalanche method and the snowball method. The avalanche method, of course, is where you list everything by the highest interest rate to lowest interest rate, and you work at paying off the highest interest rate and working your way down and not paying attention to your balance. Where the snowball method, and I think this has the opportunity to work best, because you're incentivized. When you pay something off, you feel good about it. So, if you put the 800 on the top, you made the minimum payments, on the other ones, and you're able to pay an extra $100 a month on your this retail credit card. And so you're paying, instead of just $50 a month, you're paying $150. You're done with this in 5 months roughly, paying off that 800. So now that $150 would come down to that personal loan. So you remember, we're not looking at the interest rates. We're going to the next lowest dollar amount that's still there. You were paying a minimum of that 25 here. So now you start paying $175. So a little over 12 months, you'll have paid this off. And so now you go up to the 3,000, and you were making a $150 payment there. So now you're doing 175 plus 150. You're paying, I think that's 325, just right off the top of my head. And all of a sudden that will get paid off. And now you take that and you start paying that 325 on top of whatever you're paying on your student loan. And you're paying that down. As you can see, you're snowballing to that bigger number, but you've eliminated 3 smaller ones and you feel really good about yourself. And the goal is of your budget is not to reacquire this other debt. That's what that budget's going to help you do, is manage your money so you don't reacquire that debt. Because I have seen and I've helped individuals create budgets, pay down their debt, to see them then reacquire that debt after they paid it off. And that's the hardest thing, is when you see that, you've seen how successful somebody's been, and then they do something. Again, we're human. We make mistakes sometimes, and we have an impulse, and we act upon it, and then we cause a financial issue in our life. So thinking about this, how would you deal with an emergency currently? I will be very honest. One point in life, if you asked me how I would deal with an emergency, I would pull out my credit card. At one point in my life, I would honestly would not be able to have $400 in cash to my name. That's how I would have taken care of an emergency. So I always tell folks, when you're working at creating emergency funds, you want to systematically put that money away. And I tell folks, you need to put money away that you feel comfortable with. Meaning, if you're comfortable putting $5 away because that's what you can do it. Because if you do $100 and you can't, and you're uncomfortable because you can't now make your rent payment, or you can't make your car payment, or it causes stress on how to make your utility payment, that type of stuff, I would tell you not to go that route. I would tell you to set it up so that you're systematically doing. And if you have a financial institution that allows you to automatically redirect money out of your check when you get paid. So if you get paid on every other Friday and you can redirect $10 out of that check into a savings account, I would tell you to do that, because when you don't see it, you don't spend it. So the old adage, out of sight, out of mind, is absolutely correct. And so it's a good way, and you're doing it systematically and building up your funds. Then, of course, there's always looking at your budget and looking at ways to cut. So when I create a budget and I write down the salon budget for my wife, I always tell her she only never needs to spend $25. And she always looks at me and says, no, that's not true. It's going to be $100, good, bad, or indifference. And I say, yes, because I know that is one need that is kind of like a want. So you will have some needs that will be, or wants that will kind of be needs. And so you have to look at those areas that you can really make a change in. One of my things I did with one of my sons is he's a big gamer. And so we sat down and we looked at his activity that was happening. And I said, well, how many games are you playing on a regular basis and how many hours? And he had 4 or 5 that he played only 1 or 2 hours a month. And I said, well, how well do you like those games? And he said, oh, they're okay. I said, if you had a chance and you wanted to save money, would you cancel them? And then out of them, most of them, he said yes. And right there was between $7 to $11 a month. So, 5, that's, you don't think about it, but that's say $60 a month. At the end of the year, that's $720 that he's freed up for other things to use that money for, to either save it, pay down other debt. It was a simple step. And it's not easy sometimes to look at it that way. So think about it. If you don't have cable anymore, but you have Netflix, say you have a Hulu, you have Amazon Prime, there's all these different services out there, ABC, Peacock, Paramount. I can't go through all of them. So look at those services track on how many hours you're actually going to watch. If you're watching, say, NBC for only one show for 1 hour, I challenge you to not ask you if you really need that service just for 1 hour. You really, excuse me. So if your service is $8, you're paying $8 for a 1 hour show. Think about it that way. So look at those kind of things. Think about your grocery. When you're grocery shopping, I like ribeye, but ribeyes are now getting, $16 to $20 a pound. I might go to skirt steak. It's still a good cut of meat, but it's about half the price. So looking at replacing some things in my grocery budget to make sure that I save some money for other parts of my budget. So thinking about that and where you can cut. I will tell you, it's not realistic to think that you can cut your rent or your mortgage. You can refinance your mortgage, but depending upon what you might have to pay, will it be beneficial for you in the long run? You have to ask that question. And I always tell folks you have to save more than 1% in your interest rate when you refinance. So if your interest rate is 5%, you need to make sure you see a reduction of 1% or your new mortgage is 4%. It just, you need to have that to make it pay for your costs when you redo that mortgage. So I talked about some of this, I'd shop around. Insurance people say if you shop around for your insurance, that's probably one of the best ways to save money. I always tell folks you want to make sure you're comfortable with who you're purchasing your insurances from. You have a relationship, because it's easy for something to go wrong and not have a relationship and not be able to contact that insurance person. I'm always checking clearance aisles and seeing if I can pick up stuff that's been marked down. I replaced my washer and dryer, and I went to the section in the dent and, I call it the dent and scratch area, where they had a machine might have a dent. And I will tell you, how many washers or dryers do people come down and look at to see if it has a dent or a scratch? I mean, yes, we look at it, but it's only there to wash the clothes. And the clothes don't care if there's a scratch or a dent on the side as long as the machine works fine. So think about that. That helps you. Be cautious in buying bulk. You can buy a whole big box of cereal, but if you only eat half of it because you get tired of it, and or if it goes stale, then did you really save any money? Because now you buy it again, where if you bought a smaller box, you use it all up, and then you buy it again. Yes, it looks like it costs more money up front, but in the long run, you save money because you're not buying it more often because you throw it out. Of course, getting things when they're in season or hot. Good example is the best time to buy apples, of course, is in the fall when they're in season. They're expensive in the wintertime and in the spring because they're out of season. And they got to be, if we're buying them and they're coming from overseas, there's a lot more expense involved. When you look at looking at deals, look to see what the issues are. Is there expiration dates? Is there defects or damage that will not let the product work properly? Of course, everybody says, hey, I got a great deal. And then you have to ask them, how often are you going to use it? And if it's like 1 or 2 times, was it really a deal? Even if you save some money, if you don't have use for it and use it on a regular basis, is it really a good deal? Of course, there's always strategies for sticking to a budget. Remember, focus on the reward versus the punishment. The reward is you're paying stuff down when you stay on the budget, you're living within your means, and you're budgeting for having things that you're going to enjoy or have fun with when you put it in there, versus telling yourself you're giving something up and it makes you feel bad, and then you don't want to adhere to that budget because you have those negative thoughts. You want to be systematic in when you're doing it. Automatic. You want to save that money on a regular basis. You want to follow your budget on a regular basis to help you do that. When you're saving money, I tell folks think of you're saving money in buckets. And the idea is you have an emergency bucket, you have a midterm bucket, and you have your retirement bucket. And you want to keep filling those buckets at different rates based on how long. And then set reminders why you're doing it, look at it, and so you can update it as things change. Folks at the financial institutions will give you good ideas and suggestions. I can tell you can go out probably in the internet and do a search for like free budgets, and they'll come up with Excel spreadsheets for you to use that you can download without any cost. And so this is a pretty quick session because we covered a lot of this last week, which took a longer period of time. So when you think about this, follow that 50-30-20 rule. It's very helpful. Work on increasing that emergency savings, even if you're doing it slowly. And at the same time, work on trying to pay down some of that debt. So when you create your emergency savings, you use that, you don't increase your debt to get through that time frame. And of course, ask people to help. Everybody, I hate to say this, everybody has an opinion, and some of them are good. And I always learn something sometimes about how to help people because someone says, hey, have you thought about this? I was teaching a class and we had a lady who said she makes all her own soap and she does it much cheaper than buying it off the shelf. And she got the recipe off YouTube or something. I can't tell you where because unfortunately I don't remember, but she said she had researched it and it worked really well and she was really pleased with it, and she couldn't be more tickled on how much money she was saving instead of buying all her soap that she was spending funds on. So thinking about other ways to save your money. And Takesha, that is it. This is the last slide, so I'm going to open it up for questions. Like I said, I know it was pretty quick. Hopefully there were some questions that might come through now. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Well, I'm searching Facebook. Oh, I don't see that we have any questions. All right, so thank you, Mike. Thank you for everyone who will get a chance to watch this as it posts on Facebook. Please feel free to put your questions in as comments as the video plays. And if there are any, I will give them to Mike so that he can answer them at the beginning of the next session. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Mike, for your time, and everybody have a good evening.